What's up, guys? As some of you know, I was out in Miami at the International Aroid show, and I had one of the most interesting conversations I've had about Variegated Monstera with a man named Michael DeAndre. I wasn't aware of Michael before this by his name, but I knew him from his eBay user handle. He's always been selling really rare Aroids, and I just didn't know who this person was in Florida. So throughout the interview, we're going to talk about how potentially there's unlimited amount of Variegated Monstera. We'll go into why that could be a possibility. And you'll likely see in this video some Variegated Monstera that you might not have ever seen before, which is actually really cool. And I hope you guys enjoy that. And then while I'm talking to him, I'm kind of like having my doubts, right, about it. I don't know all the growers in Florida and I'm new to the area. But while we're having the conversation, no one other than Enid Offolter walks up and not only says hi to Mike, but she then buys a plant from him. So stick around through this video. The audio is not great, so I'm going to kind of talk you guys through what Mike and I are discussing, but you're going to be able to hear some parts of it. So I hope you guys enjoy the video and stick around till the end, because we're going to talk about a stolen Joepii.
How much is this one? Like 6,000. How many years ago was that one? 2.5 from seed. Like a tray of Deliciosa. One popped up. And it's a $6,000 seed.
He essentially says he found Monstera Masterpiece and he named it that because he found it in a tray of Deliciosa green seedlings. And I asked how much is that plant, and he did respond with $6,500 just for the top cutting of that plant. And I know before anyone gets triggered about the different names, we're going to talk about also how these are all different individuals, just like you or I.
Okay, from tissue. I saw it. And how much is something like this? Yeah? Okay. So does it grow higher than that?
Okay, so this next plant is unlike anything I've ever seen before. This is the plant that caught my eye, is because it almost makes me think that like any version of Variegated Monstera potentially could exist in the wild. And this is really all of the combination of all the Variegated Monstera, I guess maybe without Albo, but this plant really has it all. This is a tricolor Thai Constellation. So as Mike explains, it came from the tissue lab in Thailand, but it looks like an aurea, so it has that limey green yellow variegation across the dark hunter green leaves of Monstera deliciosa, but with the flecking of the constellation pattern from Thai Constellation. As he said, that is a $10,000 plant still in 2023, which I could only imagine that going for, I guess, 30 or 50,000 in the middle of the pandemic.
This is a large one mint. Now, this Thai Constellation is mint come from the same seed found.
Okay, so here I'm completely wrong. I've been throwing around this theory that I think Thai Constellation and mint come from the same area because that's very similar variegation, and Mike shuts that down. So I was totally wrong about that. And what Mike is saying is that this plant actually comes from seed, and we end up getting the full story on mint. And this is actually the guy that named mint as well as Creme Brulee Thai Constellation. And I know a lot of people hate the name Thai Constellation Creme Brulee, but it will make a lot more sense as we get through this video and kind of hash out how that comes to be. So essentially he says just, you know, when you prop a bunch of Deliciosa seeds, maybe 100,000 of them, you'll get one seed that looks like it has variegation. And that essentially is the mutant. That's the mutant that we're all after that looks so much different than the rest of the 100,000. And this plant actually that we're holding, the prices were so good at the Aroid show, is crazy. This plant, this exact plant, the whole plant was about $1,000, which is pretty good for a large mint. Okay, and here what Mike's explaining is what they call a full mint. It's essentially when the plant doesn't have any dark green patches and when it almost has that like white monster look to them. I still tend to get those two mixed up, but the white monster tends to stay more white. We actually talk about that also. So they call it a full mint, and this whole plant was $1,500, which is, again, a really good deal. Not a top cutting, just the whole plant, $1,500.
How much is that one right there? Yeah. That's a small form.
Wow, I like this. What is it? Okay, so Mike's the real deal.
Like this? Okay. So let's...
Okay, so this is the moment that I'm kind of talking to this guy. I don't know his whole backstory, and none other than Enid Offolter of NSE Tropicals walks by. I'm totally starstruck. And it's a really cool moment. I'm like, I know who you are, but you have no idea who I am, but I'm a big fan of yours. But she comes up to Mike and she has money in her hand. I'm like, okay, so obviously they know each other, instant credibility. And she gives him money for a huge Calocasia, I think it was, actually for her pond. Stay tuned for the Enid Offolter interview coming up. But it instantly gave me like, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about, especially when it comes to rare Aroids and variegated Monstera. So it's really cool to meet Enid here, but just to see her interact with Mike was awesome. So essentially what Mike is showing here is the Shamrock shake, he's calling it. It looks like a green on green Monstera with like minty vibes to it, that's how I can describe it. And he says essentially that he found it in a crop of, I believe it was 6-inch Monstera, regular Deliciosa, that the grower had cut back at the end of the season. And what popped up on one of the nodes was a bunch of variegation, and that is that exact plant. So these plants can come from seed, they can come from tissue culture, they can come from regular old Monsteras. And then he says that actually this plant is not for sale because it's already been sold for $5,800. Essentially what the guys are showing now is White Monster from Kunzo. The gentleman in the back has more of the backstory on how it has really been around since World War II and Kunzo got it from a grower, and how it really stays bright white in variegation as it kind of survives its life.
Yes.
Has a different fenestration pattern. A lot of people
right. So this is variegated large form.
Brazil.
Brazil form. Okay. And are you looking for the wing geniculum too?
This will have that wing geniculum.
Which it does.
The perforations.
Okay.
On the Brazilian.
The inners, like the secondary inners, triples.
Yes.
Okay.
They're very, see on this next leaf?
Yeah.
They're big and round, right in the center. Beautiful. Big and round, right in the center.
He's showing the inner perforations here, and that's what's making it that Brazilian form, which is that large, huge variegated Monstera.
A whole plant?
Very good genetics.
Whole plant?
Yes.
Like if you look at it,
Is small form, large form a real thing?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Small form
Is Borsigiana a real thing?
I'm kind of messing with Mike here and just kind of, throwing things around like, is small form a thing? Is large form a thing? Is Borsigiana a thing? And he's like, yeah, like, of course it is. So he's pulling out a Borsigiana-like plant now.
small forms can get large,
Yeah.
but they don't.
If you want to shop too, go in.
It's a new mutation from Thailand called green snow.
Green snow.
And if you look at
Not creme brulee. Okay.
This one he's showing in my left hand, this is called Green Snow. It also came from the Thai Constellation in some sort of variation. And then in my right hand is that Creme Brulee.
And they're creating these in Thailand.
some of the names just want to well, that's
I'd love to hear what you have to say about it.
but, the funny thing is, a lot of famous names, his name from nickname.
Yeah. Really?
And also,
So that's the moment in which I realized that Mike finally shares with me that he named Mint Monstera. He named Creme Brulee. Again, more credibility. I feel silly not knowing who Mike was. I knew of his plants, but I have never met the guy before. Truly a pretty cool moment for one of the, in Monstera Variegated, one of the big names. I was very starstruck by this whole thing and nerding out super hard.
name this, name that. Think about it, when I did Creme Brulee, you took my friends and said, you did the Mint Monstera, come up with a name.
Are you a fan of Creme Brulee?
Creme Brulee, so we were going out to give me getting out of the car. Creme Brulee.
Okay, so here's the moment in which I had already talked to Barry Schwartz, Jungle Barry, over on Instagram. Barry is credited with bringing the mint and essentially spreading it across the US in cutting form. Mike is credited with giving it its name because he started selling it on eBay in 2017. Jungle Mint is now officially a cultivar, and that was previously called NOID. So as he said just there, that's huge. The origin of all mints came from Barry Schwartz, Jungle Barry.
Medusa? Oh! Okay, what's going on here?
Medusa has an aberrant different cell structures that creates. Hey, how's it going? It creates
It's like a flame?
it's a monster type.
But
An
an aberrant.
what did you call it?
So, I mean, this plant was crazy to see in person. Of course, you have the very deformed Deliciosa leaf, but the important part on that plant and what he ends up describing is the dark green coloring on the backside of that Thai Constellation leaf. And that came from a Thai-con. And then I bring up to Mike, like, is Thai Constellation root rot? And he does confirm that he has trouble with that in that, we call it the Valley of Death, but the establishment period of the Thai Constellation, when you're bringing them up from tissue out of bag into 4-inch pots, it's very challenging to make it through that. So that's the $4,000 plant that's already sold. So I quickly gave it back to him because, you know, holding these plants makes you a little bit nervous.
If I want it, yeah, I only have right now.
Actually, what ended up happening, and Enid comes over and explains it to us, is that unfortunately in the back row, they had some of the importers. A young man was selling a bunch of awesome price, like a caramel marble for like $700, Billy's for like $700 to $1,000. And he had a variegated Joepii. Unfortunately, this young dude got his variegated Joepii stolen. I guess they were helping him unpack a box and someone like swiped his plant. So just to say, like, it's shitty out there. Just be careful when you guys are vending at plant shows and try and bring a couple people, ideally 3 people, to like run the booth. But bad things happen everywhere and they will catch that guy or that person who stole that plant. But the International Aroid Show was super fun. I highly recommend it for really any plant enthusiast, and shout out to anyone that came and said hi. It was really cool meeting all of you guys. So thank you guys so much for watching this week's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, please click the like button down below, and we'll see you in next week's video.